welcome to the locker room. I'm Sonia Emanuel and today I'm joined by Lachlan and Matt Williams. Welcome to you both.
Hey Sonia, thanks for having me.
It's great to be here.
On today's show, it's all about football and particularly World Cup fever. The build-up to the men's event in Qatar and just as importantly, the women's tournament next year in Australia and New Zealand. And we'll look at the health of the A-League competitions as they battle for attention in a crowded summer sporting calendar. First up, the Men's World Cup in Qatar is just a month away, and of course, a lot of our attention is on the Socceroos. Lachlan and Matt, is it just an achievement that we've made it, or are we looking to make an impression while we're there?
I think we're definitely lucky to be at the World Cup considering the squad we have, but I think we should be proud of the achievement to make it there. I mean, it definitely wasn't a smooth qualification. We had to go through the playoffs and we beat Peru in a very tense penalty shootout, and we needed some Andrew Redmayne heroics to save us. I think, we've made the World Cup every year since 2006 now. I think we've been on a bit of a decline in terms of our squad since 2015, but it's definitely exciting to be here again. I think it's a good opportunity to show some new talent.
So would you say we're just turning up for numbers?
Look, I really think we are. I mean, the quality's really dropped in the past few years. Like, if you look at our squad before, we had, Tim Cahill, Miller Jedinak, Mark Milligan, Mark Viduka, Harry Kuehl, and now, honestly, I couldn't even name a Socceroo in the squad right now. So I think we are just turning up for numbers. And if you look at our group, we have France, Denmark, who are both great sides. So I think we'll be lucky to get third in our group.
Yeah, I think one positive to take is obviously, and you mentioned all the old Socceroos with plenty of experience, their time is gone. I think it's a good time to sort of showcase a new generation. We've got Joel King, he's 21, he's starting for the Socceroos and he's playing over in Denmark. We've also got Tyrese Francois, he made a Premier League debut for Fulham last year, 22 years old. And then Geraint Quoll just signed for Newcastle United in the Prem. I mean, they're fourth in the Premier League. He's an 18-year-old, so it's good to see that obviously they're scouting over here and picking up some of our players. So if they can get some playing time, some experience on the pitch, it's definitely going to benefit the Socceroos for the future.
Do we think that the negativeness clouding Qatar this year is sort of dimming the World Cup a bit, just because it's usually such a joyous occasion, just in regards to the infrastructure, human rights protests and that sort of thing going on there?
Significantly, yeah. I think this World Cup really, highlights the influence that money has on the footballing world right now. Like, if you look at how much money it took to make this World Cup, it cost 220 billion, and the last 6 World Cups have cost around 35 billion. So there's just a mad increase there. And then if you look at all the problems that it's caused, like, the workers aren't even getting paid. There's about 1.7 million migrant workers, and then about 6,500 have died due to the work conditions and things, and they don't even have proper places to sleep or eat or anything like that, and they're not even getting paid. So I think, it's really sad to see.
Yeah, I agree with Matt. I think it's definitely a time to look at issues off the pitch. I think even some nations are deciding to take a stand against what's happening in Qatar. Hummel, the kit sponsor for Denmark, they've decided to mute their logos for their kits because they don't want to be seen at the World Cup. And they've also dropped a third kit, an all-black kit, which is the colour of mourning, just to take a stand against the human rights stuff that's going on in Qatar. So it's not all about the football this time around, for sure. And
then footballing great Eric Cantona has even come forward to say this World Cup shouldn't have gone to Qatar, and then it really just again highlights the amount of control that money has on the footballing world.
So in saying all this, is it looking to become a cup where we talk more about social issues rather than the football itself?
I think it really has to be. I think with the amount of social issues that have occurred in the build-up, I think with 5 billion people projected to tune into at least one game, or especially the final, I think it's a great platform to talk about these issues.
Yeah, and the tournament's always about bringing nations and fans and different cultures together to share, for the shared love of football. And I think it's going to be the same this time around, obviously looking at these issues that are going on in Qatar. There's plenty of issues that you've mentioned, and there's also other ones. It's still illegal to be gay in Qatar, and homosexuality can even see you get a prison sentence for 3 years. So I think, it's more than about the football this time, and there's a lot of things that we should be looking at.
We also have the issue that major leagues are going to be disrupted by the Cup. How is this going to impact both the players and the leagues themselves? Well,
it's the first time that the World Cup's played around Christmas. Usually it's played June, July. So I think that's going to obviously affect the schedules, and it's going to be a big difference for players and even fans watching. For the players though, I think it won't affect them too much in terms of their load. Like, they're already playing in their league and they've got games every week, sometimes twice a week. So I think they're going to be able to adjust to that format quickly. I think what we will see a bit of a mix-up is when we come back to clubland, and obviously the disruption. I think we're going to see some momentum from the clubs that were doing well maybe shift. We might see some upsets when we come back to the leagues.
I think I have to disagree on just on player sustainability. I think there'll be many more injuries that'll come out of this post-World Cup. I think players are playing at their maximum right now just for a little bit more revenue and a bit more money. So I think, definitely player sustainability is brought into question with the amount of games they have to play.
Let's come back home now into a cup of a different kind. The Australia Cup final was marred by spectators ruining the welcome to country and performing Nazi salutes. 2 Sydney United fans have since been given lifetime bans from Australian soccer venues. Lachlan, Matt, how much damage does behaviour like this do to the sport?
Well, yeah, it certainly leaves a sour taste in everyone's mouth. I mean, it's very disappointing because Sydney United were the first NPL side in Australia to reach the Australia Cup final, and yeah, that achievement was really overshadowed by some pretty horrid behaviour from the fans.
Yeah, and it's a really shame that they had to ruin their Cinderella run like that. I mean, the NPL side, they beat Brisbane Roar in the semi-final, which was really great to see. And then, yeah, it's a shame to see that their fans ruined such a great run, I'll be honest.
Yeah, and it was such a good showcase for Sydney United to sort of promote that second tier that everyone's been talking about. It shows that the quality is there in terms of the sides. Obviously, maybe the attitude from some of the fans is lacking, and that's something that we need to look at and fix.
I think there's something they need to know, is that there's definitely a difference between being passionate and then being straight out offensive. And I think on that day, the fans were just straight out offensive.
Yeah, it's really sad that those actions made such a negative impact on the night. Continuing on with the domestic game though, do we think that there should be a second division in Australia?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely vital that we get a second division up and running, a professional one, and as soon as possible. I mean, all across Australia we have the NPL, which is below the A-League, and we've got second division, third division in those competitions already running with promotion and relegation, so I don't see why we can't do that now. Yeah, there's been talks for years about it, and I think it's absolutely crucial that we get that going to grow the game here. I mean, you look overseas at other leagues, England's a really good example, where they've got the Premier League, Championship, League 1 and 2, and then even more below that. It's good for the clubs because, for the fans especially, because it adds incentive for the teams to, stay up. The relegation battles and the promotion battles are really interesting and intriguing. And it just adds that extra level of competition for the teams. Yeah,
I think it was definitely a great step in the right direction for the A-League, adding the 2 teams, MacArthur and the Wollongong team. But I think it definitely needs to have an ability for the second division to be able to move into the first one, and then for the first one to fall down. Because if you don't have a consequence for coming last, then what's the real point in even trying? So yeah, I think it's definitely something that needs to be added in. If you look at even the Canberra NPL competition this year, Belconnen United, who was one of the founding clubs of the whole Canberra football scene, just came 8th place and they got relegated into the CPL. And then if you look to the year before, Tuggeranong United had the same thing happen, and they just gained promotion back in the CPL by coming first place. So I think it's definitely something that just adds that next level of competitiveness that needs to be in Australians at A-League level.
Let's keep talking about the domestic game. The A-League men's competition is now in its 18th season. So what's the report card look like, and is it having an impact?
Yeah, well, eyes on the A-League have definitely been diminishing over the years, and it's clear to see. I think, obviously peaked in around the early 2010s, and I think COVID might have a bit of an impact on that. Obviously, TV ratings have been lacking, and it's, the stats don't lie as well. Channel 10, who show the A-League at the moment, they usually get 8 to 12% of viewers on prime time, and then when the A-League's on, it drops to about 3 to 5%. So that just shows the state of the game at the moment.
I think it's really dropped just because there's no big name and no big talent in the A-League anymore. Like if you look back a couple of years, we had Del Piero for Sydney FC, and then we have Timmy Cahill for Melbourne City. So I think there's just no big names bringing in the revenue like it was before.
Yeah, and it's not just TV as well. I mean, we're not getting people coming through the stadiums as well. The crowd attendances have dropped. Melbourne Victory have had an average of 17,000 fans, like a decrease of 17,000 fans since 2016. Sydney United and Western Sydney have also seen big drops in fans, I think 9,000 on average for them. And then Brisbane Roar have actually lost about 50% of their fans into stadiums since 2016. So yeah, it's not looking good for the A-League, and I think the second division is what will spike those views back up.
The A-League women's similarly hasn't really taken off, but it's still looking positive on other measures, like the Matildas are still a high-profile national team. So how do we think the Women's League's still making their mark?
Well, yeah, the Matildas are one of the powerhouses in women's football. We've got big names playing all overseas. A lot of players currently are playing in the Women's Super League in England. We've got Hayley Rasso, Sam Kerr, Caitlin Ford, Steph Catley. These are some of the best players in the world. So it shows that Australian football is on a good path. I think the W League is in a similar spot to the ALW is in a similar spot to AL Men's. I think they're just not getting enough people watching it because the football is good. It's just about attracting those eyes to TV into the games.
I think it's especially important to remember that Sam Kerr also got nominated for the Ballon d'Or. I think she came 3rd, which is really great to see that an Australian is ranking up in the top 3 of the best footballers in the world for women's.
Yeah, and the World Cup is a perfect opportunity for to shed a light on the women's football. How important do we think the occasion is going to be next year?
Well, yeah, it's definitely the perfect opportunity. I mean, to have a World Cup on home soil, and then with the squad that we have, I think we're a real good chance. Yeah, it's estimated that 1.5 million people will come through the stadiums next year in Australia and New Zealand, and we should have about 2 billion people watching at home on TV. So yeah, it's a perfect time to get eyes on Australia, on Australian football, and for us to showcase that we do have talent here and we're serious about improving.
I think it's also a great chance just for the, young girls and all fans of the game just to come down and watch their idols play in live games. I mean, being in Australia, we're pretty disconnected from the footballing world. Like, you can't really watch any big games live, so to have your biggest idols come down to be able to play just down at your local stadium, it's great to see.
All right, well, thank you, Lachlan and Matt, for sharing your insights on the latest issues in football. If you want to see more of the best sports stories, head to our website, theowluc.com. I'm Sonia Emanuel, and we'll catch you next time in the locker room.